a tutti per essere venuti, mancano ancora alcuni partecipanti, però partiamo puntuali per regolamento. Ringrazio la platea per essere venuta, vicino a me c'è il dottor Bagazzi, il mio partner di oltre 15 anni di India. Una piccola introduzione su chi siamo, molti di voi ci conoscono, alcuni sono anche i nostri clienti, alcuni sono stati i nostri clienti, altri non ci conoscono, quindi due parole proprio su Benedetto & Co. Siamo una società di consulenza strategica direzionale che è stata costituita nel 2004, abbiamo raggiunto il nostro ventennio di attività, di professione nel campo consulenziale strategico. Siamo presenti a Brescia, come il quartier generale, Milano e Bombay. Abbiamo, diciamo, il filo conduttore della nostra società è quello di accompagnare le aziende che hanno la propensione alla crescita nei loro progetti di crescita e di sviluppo. Decliniamo questo tipo di attività in progetti strategici, in progetti di crescita tramite acquisizioni, controllo e gestione, miglioramento delle aziende, come potete vedere un po' nella nostra ruota dei eventi. Oggi siamo qua per concentrarci sul tema dell'internazionalizzazione ed in particolare sull'India, che è un po' il mercato, diciamo, il nostro fiore all'occhiello. È un'attività che è partita ormai dal 2008-2010, il primo viaggio mio personale era stato nel 2008 e in questi anni abbiamo costruito tutto un paniere di servizi, di expertise per supportare i progetti di crescita. Recentemente ci siamo certificati ISO 9000, questo per noi è un successo, siamo una delle piccole società di consulenza che però è strutturata come una vera e propria società produttiva, e quindi per noi questo ISO 9000 rappresenta un punto, diciamo, importante di avvio. Vorrei spiegarvi come verrà sviluppato la giornata. Abbiamo una prima parte dove il dottor Bagatti interverrà in inglese. Per agevolare la comprensione vi abbiamo dato un documento dove voi potete seguire il suo flow in italiano con una traduzione e vi darà, diciamo, un approfondimento del contesto macroeconomico dell'India, di cui oggi tutti parlano, però lo faremo, diciamo, in modo puntuale. Ascolteremo 3 esperienze dei nostri 3 clienti che sono a vostra disposizione non soltanto per raccontare la loro storia, ma anche per confrontarsi e condividere la loro esperienza. E poi chiuderò io con una breve sintesi dove cercherò di fare un intervento utile, pragmatico, dove fondamentalmente analizzeremo quali sono i modelli migliori e possono garantire un maggiore successo per entrare, presidiare il mercato e rimanere, e quali sono i rischi da evitare quando si vuole approcciare l'India in modo strutturato. Quindi saranno delle brevi slide più di dialogo e di racconto di esperienze che di slide. Quindi lascerei la parola al dottor Bagatti e illustrerà, diciamo, la sua parte.
Thank you, Francesca. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. But before I begin, I must apologize that I can't speak Italian or I can't follow Italian. My apologies, my Italian language consists of 5 words, hopefully I'll use them.
Not in this situation.
Important thing is, I think what we're talking about the India opportunity here assembled today. In the last 10-15 years, there have been structural changes taking place in the Indian economy. That's what you hear the buzz around. And I know here is a room full of entrepreneurs who want to go very straight to the brass tacks. What does it do to my sector in food? What does it do to my sector in fashion, in industry, here, there, etc. But I think I will create an opportunity in terms of giving you a rundown from top-down approach, what's causing the change, the dynamic change in India, the progressive change in India, the rapid change in India, and where this change is leading to, in what sectors it impacts positively, and what could be the opportunity arising in different sectors which will address for different people. So I'll start my run overview with a slight overdose on population and economics, drivers of Indian economy, what are the high opportunity sectors, what are the challenges that face? Is this run up on the economy for real, or there is like for the short term? And I'll also highlight some typical high-level changes which impact at a regulatory level on the foreign companies. Francesca will talk more in terms of the specifics at the operating level, but I'll talk at the macro level. And what are the key regulatory issues? And what I would say is a convergence of the Indian-Italian businesses into the Indian opportunities. With this, allow me to begin. You all would know that India is now the largest populous country in the world, 1.4 billion people. And importantly, while we have 1.4 billion people, 67% of our population is of the working class. And the working class means they are the demand, they are the consumers, and the statistics prove till 2050, the dynamics of the working population is not going to dramatically change. India, thus, is going to be the largest consumer market over the next 30-year horizon at the minimum. In terms of GDP, India has made rapid strides in the last 10 years. Last few weeks, we overtook Japan to become the 4th largest economy in the world. Today, we are $4 trillion plus economy, and estimates of the World Bank and IMF are that India will be more than $6 trillion economy plus by 2030, overtaking Germany sooner than 2030. We'll become soon 3rd largest economy in the world. And in terms of, one thing when you talk about GDP, what's more important from a domestic context is the purchasing power parity. Our purchasing power parity on the GDP basis already positions us as the 3rd largest economy in the world. In other words, Indian consumers are today the 3rd largest consumers anywhere else in the world. So what's happening in the economy is, it's not a hot money flow. The whole economy is buzzing with activity, and growth is emanating from the consumer demand arising out of its domestic compulsion because of the youth population. And this is also resulting in one more thing, because please remember, India is coming from a relatively poor section. We were not very rich. We are still not rich, but the mentality is still of very high savings. So 15% savings is what is happening in India, one of the highest savings ratio in the world. What does this lead to? This leads to dynamics of the capital markets, which may impact some of the people, and we'll talk about it as we go forward. We talked about GDP as the 4th largest economy in the world, but GDP per capita, we're still far away from being a developed country in the world. We still just about, our per capita is below $3,000 per annum. US, I think, is about $80,000, $90,000. Europe is about $70,000, $80,000. In other words, the prosperity at the down people, at the grassroots people, is not that high. And that basically means, but this gap is being rapidly bridged. It won't happen. The gap won't bridge over the next 20 years. But in the next few years, this $2,000, $3,000 is going to be something like about $4,000 by 2030 per capita, which means that the company has arrived in terms of the upper middle income economy as a classification of economics. So rising GDP this per capita purchasing parity is causing transformation in the consumer demand, and people are now gradually moving from very, very low cost to high price product, to branded products. The price sensitivity, which is today there, is gradually but surely on a decline. In terms of exports, was contributing to the exports, India has experienced a staggering 105% growth in the last 10 years. We've got the chart up there, which are the sectors controlling the global economic rate, the fastest economic country in growing economic growth rates in the world, as manifested by the IMF and the World Bank. And this is here to stay. So worldwide, we will have a larger, the growth rates are there to stay for the next foreseeable 10 years, as per the forecast of the World Bank. The composition of the Indian industry still remains strongly in terms of the services sector. The industry is just about 27.5%, and agriculture is about 17.8%. But what's the transformation taking place? The transformation is that manufacturing is gradually increasing, and in both the corridors of the services and eating away the corridors of the agriculture sector as well. So manufacturing sector is increasing, and this is a result of various policies. We'll talk briefly about it later on. And in the agriculture sector, which today constitutes 67% of our population, the impact in the agriculture sector itself is transforming in itself in terms of moving from cash crops to value-added products. In other words, the farm income is now set to rise due to the value addition being provided into their sector. I will quickly talk about the exports. It's an important thing because exports defines the country's stability. It also defines the lack of fragility in the case of India. Some years ago, this Modi government introduced a concept called Make in India. It was promoting that come to Make in India, and this Make in India program has actually taken off in a significant manner. More specifically, India, which was in the defense, India has moved very specifically high end on the defense in terms of defense exports. Our exports have moved from, in the last 10 years, there's a 67% increase, contributing by various sectors, predominantly the manufacturing sector. Earlier, our exports predominantly in the services sector. Today is gradually moving towards exports being dominated by the manufacturing sector. I come to the next section is what are the really, this is you got a brief preview of the size of economy, the growth rate, the massive population base which is demanding consumer goods. So as a result of this, what are the drivers of the Indian economy at a sectoral level, at a policy level? And I will quickly highlight some of them that we go forward with this. In terms of the highways, India is building 10,000 kilometers per year, the largest number of highway constructions happening anywhere in the world. In other words, construction sector industries, those involved anything really in the construction and machinery manufacturing will see an uptick. Airports, 15 known airports are planned in the next 5 years. In the last 10 years, number of airports have doubled. Once again, those in the play of infrastructure have something interesting happening here. Nowhere in the world, 50 new airports are coming up in the next 5 years. Railways, an investment of over $600 billion is happening in Europe, by 2030. And this is introducing high-speed, converting low speed into high-speed, metro corridors, you name it, and it's being done. Railway stations are being modernized, getting into the maintenance state. And the whole thing is, they're redeveloping something like 1,300 railway stations and modernization of freight corridors. Ports. One of the significant initiatives the government has taken in recent years is if you see the Indian coastline, they're building ports all along the coast. Okay. And today in the shipping industry, India is very, very weak. India has never done shipbuilding. India has only done shipbreaking. So if any one of you are here in the shipbuilding businesses, that's the place to be in. A total of 232 new projects have been announced, several all along the coast. We're building a sea corridor of transportation because the transportation by sea and inland waterway also is the cheapest form of transportation in India. Shipbuilding, I just talked about it. The maritime vision of 2030 is to build 2 mega building parks costing about 14 billion euros government investment over the next 5 years. Anyone connected in the shipbuilding industry, in the equipment handling industry, you can make out as to what kind of an opportunity that exists there. The most buoyant sector, as I see, is going to be the space and defense aeronautics, closely related. And just recently, India opened up the space sector to private businesses. It was earlier controlled only by ISRO, by one company, and now it has been opened up to the private sector. Commercial opportunities estimated at around 40 billion by 2023. People in electronics, I met some Italian companies who are strong in electronics, which are electronic producers, product solution services providers, in the space, have a huge opportunity knocking at the doors if they are in the space. In defense, as I mentioned earlier, India is making major strides in exports of defense, from being importing, the largest importer, is the third largest importer of defense. Yes, we still import our fighter planes, we still import some of our nuclear submarines, we still import, but a lot of field equipment, the artillery guns, the rifles, a whole lot of other support structures are all now being indigenously manufactured and being exported extensively. Even missiles are being exported extensively. The opportunity in the local billion is about 13.5 billion in the last year. We all heard about AI, artificial intelligence, where it's making waves worldwide. In India, it is being distinctly channelized. AI is being used distinctly channelized to commandeer the business spectacles in defense and in space, in cybersecurity, and a whole host of other areas. So artificial intelligence is being used extensively. India is on the cutting edge of deployment of artificial intelligence in terms of result systems. I'll give you an illustration. In the recent event between India and Pakistan, a 4-day skirmish on the border, India used its defense system that had relying upon domestically produced air defense systems, which are taking on satellite communication, feeding it and connecting it at the grassroots level of the artillery guns and the air defense systems. There were 4 levels in which the information was being spread, interpreted, and then retaliatory action took place in no time. The world has awakened to the deployment of artificial intelligence in the Indian defense solutions. And India is open to artificial intelligence from anywhere in the world. Any suppliers of artificial intelligence products is open to that. In the industry, there has been a leapfrog in the manufacturing capability. Basically, there was one policy introduced called production linked incentive, PLI. India introduced this PLI for 14 sectors. It's there in the lecture, I won't have to go through that. And this PLI policy gives foreign investors incentive for the next 10 years, fiscal incentives, employment incentives, various other incentives are there, because the 14 sectors are there, and it's encouraging foreign companies to come and make in India. Not necessarily for India, it could also be used India as a supply hub for the worldwide. It started off with the China Plus philosophy and is moving towards in that sense. So there are 2 categories of businesses in India: micro, small, and medium enterprises, the MSMEs, and the non-MSMEs are defined by a capital outlay of 1 million euro. The larger companies defined by a capital outlay of 10 million euro. So either which way, if you are in the 14 sectors, you have a huge advantage to be captured there. I mentioned that in agriculture, we are moving from the cultivation, from cash crop to value-added food products. So if any of you are in the business of food industry machinery, you are in for a big opportunity in India. India hasn't lost its focus in all its development, hasn't lost its focus on the green transition, the worldwide impact on the climate change. And what we are doing here is setting up the largest solar energy initiative in the world. Almost about 500 gigawatts of solar energy capacity is being created. We have also hydro projects, which were a strict was environmental issue because of constructions along the river lines. Is suddenly there's a short-term low-hanging fruit because of change of a political change. India decided not to let this water flow into Pakistan, and they are going to initiate manufacturing of hydroelectric dams all along the thing. This is going to happen in the next 12 to 24 months. If any of you are the hydroelectric space, or in construction, or in turbines manufacturers, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of stuff is happening there. Financial inclusion. This is where the empowerment of people has happened. In about I think 10 years ago, the Modi 1.0 introduced the financial inclusion of people who are non-bankable. In other words, a lot of people who are not, poor people, are drivers, service providers, who didn't have social identity cards, they didn't have any bank accounts, they were only running on cash money, they were paid in cash. The government initiated their financial inclusion under a scheme called Jan Dhan scheme. Today, these people constitute almost about 27 billion euros. Their bank account constitutes about 27 billion euros. Okay. 370 billion accounts. Okay, I guess that's more than the population or around the population of Europe. Accounts were opened in the last few years, enabling these poor people to be financially included. All these people today are using smartphones, are on internet payments, and you can see what has impacted them at the grassroots level in the consumerism is where this impact is. It's not just the important thing why I included this is nothing to do with you guys, but the economy is not just top down, it's bottom up push. And that's where the economy's strengths, the growth of the economy, the high growth rates, and the expansion of GDP is there to stay. It's not hot money. Digital infrastructure, which is now the backbone of most businesses in the world, and particularly where you have challenges in infrastructure, India has made huge strides. 881 million internet subscribers, 881 million internet subscribers. Yes, we are the second largest after China. Average value of digital payments is over 3 billion euros per day. 208.5 billion digital transactions in 2024 is the highest in the world. People on the streets who might come to you asking for alms or money or food or something will have a cell phone and they'll know and they can do that and they'll say, here's my QR, if you don't have cash, give me money on my QR. If you want to do quarter of a cent, 0.01 cent, for which there is no point, even in India, you want to make money, go in the QR and get it. So the dynamics of the consumerism has changed dramatically. And that's where is going to be the foundation of India's growth story in the future year, which in fact will then transform everywhere. Your construction worker, the guy who comes to the labor side, carrying bricks, putting the bricks of the thing, has got his cell phone, has got his QR, and is able to take money, receive money, you instantly remit the money to his people willingly thousands of miles away, to his family instantly. That's the power of digitalization that is happening. These drivers of the economy could not be facilitated, not just macro, it's a policy governance also which has happened. Relatively, some policy changes are actually fueling the growth of the Indian economy. One such, there are many, I'm not going to highlight one such thing, is the mover. Mover allows you the deferment of import duties on a capital equipment. Whether the capital equipment is old or new, if you apply for mover, you don't have to pay your customs duty, which on the GST and the VAT equivalent, almost about 28% get deferred to when you scrap the machinery or you sell the machinery. So this is a remarkable feat which suggests a huge reduction in your project outlay if you are exporting your machinery to India, sending your used lines to India for your facilitation. The other factors have been installation of insolvency, bankruptcy code, and digitalization. And incidentally, World Bank has now ranked India. We're still far away to go, but from 142nd position in 2014, in 2019 we're 63rd. The data is not available for 2024 from the IMF website, but informal sources say we are almost at 30 position. So ease of doing business. Urbanization. Urbanization is also causing a huge transformation and business opportunities. Today, we have a situation where urban population is 37% and rural population is about 67%. In by 2050, India will be expected to have 1.7 billion people, with urbanization reaching 57%. Today we're 1.4, by 2050 we'll be 1.7, but 50% of our population will be living in cities. What does this mean? Housing, steel, cement, building interiors, smart gadgets, everything you can think of that connects to the housing is moving there. Today, I live at a good address, but my building is pathetic. But if you see the buildings that are coming up now, smart buildings, fancy buildings, everybody is paying very high market price for those fancy buildings. Middle class people. The cost of building is the same, but they're all buying new gadgets. Everything is an economic opportunity, which most of these gadgets are not being produced in India as of now today. They will happen, but they're not being produced. So ladies and gentlemen, reforms is still a journey, is still continuing. Some labor reforms have happened, but more are awaited. And opportunities of this nature in urbanization, building interiors, construction, transportation, highways, roads, infrastructure built up, okay, and any related sectors, energy, green energy, is there for the big opportunities rise. I come to the next section, which are very specifically, which are the industrial sectors in which opportunities, somewhere I talked about it. In space and satellites and aeronautical, okay, is one of the sectors in which huge opportunities. As of now, there's only one player which remaining, that is the India's government-owned ISRO. But now SpaceLink is coming to India, it's going to make a dramatic change, and a whole lot of satellite component providers will have an opportunity. Defense, as I talked about, a related opportunity is a great opportunity, but for you to supply to defense requirements, you have to be in India, because defense requirement is 90% indigenization. 90% of the goods must be made in India. Industrial process and controls, auto components, and for OEMs, hybrids, and electrical vehicles. Again, big opportunity. India is possibly the second largest or third largest country in the world for autos. It's rapidly rising with the rise in consumer demand. And at the auto components level, the transformation which is taking place, people demanding, the OEMs are demanding composite systems, fusions of metal with rubber and plastics is a challenge and is a great opportunity. Robotics and robots, these are making a change in the industrial sphere, how industry is going to work to ensure quality and productivity. Machinery and fabrication. India's machinery and fabrication are rising at a rapid rate. Quality-wise, we recently inducted some projects and you can see the evidence of it. India fabrication costs, landed costs are at least 33% to 50% cheaper than even imported goods from China. So if you are in fabrication business, you really have an opportunity to produce there rather than fabricating it here or fabricating elsewhere from Poland or anywhere else and exporting to India. Healthcare and pharma is where the challenge is. We're still reliant on imported equipment, the technical equipment, the manufacturing equipment, a huge opportunity. Here, if you still want to export and not manufacture in India, you've still got a big business going. Renewable energy, if you want to come in, massive play is in solar. Low-hanging fruit for the next 24 months is in the hydroelectric. But I would caution, because of the complexities involved, it is better to do jointly with Indian player. A standalone foreign initiative has a lot of challenges there. Electronics and semiconductors. Semiconductors are a new field, everybody's buzzing around. It's like decoupling from China. And this is happening also, but this is at a very high level of investment, billions of dollars of investment, in which government is becoming an active participant and willing to put money on the table if you are there. Fintech and AI, I talked about it. There are huge defense applications, cyber security applications in this thing. Food processing, there's a value addition. So low-hanging fruits out of the high opportunity sectors are the auto components, satellites and drones, and I must say, Bennett and Co have got great familiarity in all these, in most of the sectors that we've highlighted. We saw the good points of what happening in the economy, but the question always remains and must be addressed: how fragile? What is the fragility factor? What are the challenges that face the Indian economy? So some of these factors are economics related. I'm sorry pulling you back, entrepreneurs back into the field of economics, but that's the reality. Fiscal deficit was a huge challenge for India, and this is being aggressively controlled, very aggressively controlled, even during COVID times, when worldwide every economist suggested not to adhere to the fiscal norms. India adhered to the fiscal norms. And as a result, India's currency was the only one, and the inflation impact was minimal as compared to any other country in the world, outside of Europe I'm talking about. So India is on the right trajectory. Is unlikely we'll have a fiscal indiscipline which can derail the economy from a high inflation, high depreciation rupee. So India is on the high trajectory. There is a challenge that we need to manage our regional provinces' deficits. At the central level is already controlled, but the government is now taking aggressive steps in not allowing the states to borrow more, the regions to borrow more, if they do not comply within the fiscal norms. Second, we see as an economic challenge, a social challenge, this is not an economic, it is a wealth inequality. We have seen the wealth inequality in emerging markets causing revolutions. You've heard of Arab Spring, you've heard of various other situations. It's a fact that 1% of our population owns about 40% of India's economic concentration. And the bottom 50% owns only 3%. What could be an alternative? In reality, India has adopted a capitalistic model of growth. In fact, there is no opportunity. This could become a social issue if not handled properly. But the reality is that the capitalism form of top-down approach is the only form if you want to progress, if India to progress, given the size of its population and given the complexities of a diversity of our cultural heritages inside the India. Another key challenge is the rise in the unemployment. I would not say it's unemployment, it's underemployment, it's employment jobs that are being available to the youth. India is producing about 10 million job aspirants every year. Do we have jobs for them? The answer is no. So what do? So they become entrepreneurs, they become small loans, street vendors, making food articles, etc., etc. Some of these, most of these street vendors earn more than I earn. It's a fact. Most of these street vendors, as you here, who knows it, who's experienced it, they understand that. So they are, but they are not shown as employed. Nonetheless, the employment factor is well under control today. The unemployment factor is well under control today. A bigger challenge is not, I don't believe, an unemployment challenge, because the entrepreneur skill runs far and deep in the Indian psyche. And therefore, nobody hesitates in taking a small job, being a street vendor, selling food to the street, or making food articles to the street, or doing something else and something else. But the bigger challenge is, are we producing skilled manpower to be that can be absorbed with industry? That's where the answer is a capital no. More than 50% of people who graduate from our colleges are unemployable. And I'm not talking about liberal arts colleges, I'm talking about engineering and technology colleges. I'm a professor of business practice in a university. It's pathetic when I see their design labs, absolutely outdated. Forget the equipment, the faculties are outdated. So this causes an issue that when you come in as an industry, when my colleagues here who set up the industry, it has an issue for them. When they have to hire people, they cannot hire direct from the colleges or the polytechnics and put them on the job there. Those guys know nothing. So if you hire an experienced person, you invest money in the training, and that's a cost that you have to bear, and that's a learning curve when a man is not fully productive, you have to absorb. There's no shortcut to this, and unfortunately, nothing great is happening in the terms of reform of this area. Red tapeism and corruption. I'm making no bones about it. There is red tape. Much as we say, your ease of doing business in India moved from 142nd to 69 to 33, there's still a lot of red tape. And this bureaucracy I've seen in the United States, I've seen in some countries in Europe, I've not experienced in Italy, but I've seen fairly worldwide, except Singapore where there's nothing. But the red tapeism, government is moving from automating a faceless government interface. Today, I don't have to file my tax returns. My scrutiny of tax returns is all faceless. In other words, I don't have to face somebody to negotiate a bribe to settle my case at my convenience. It's all faceless. Even if there's an assessment order I give and say, it goes to faceless domain. It goes to somebody sitting in thousands of miles away who reviews the order signed by an appellate authority. And I cannot access that, I cannot challenge that. But they find, the system finds the way of doing it. 2024, 66% of businesses pay bribes. This is not a great compliment on Indian society, but we at Penitent Group, we understand this business and we handle it very, very efficiently well. I'm sorry, I'm bragging about our services, this is not the platform, but I understand there's a big challenge and we do it right. Some amount, there's no transparency there. You can believe in us, because we believe we get the best value. My colleagues here would vouch for what value we have delivered to them in this area. I come to the next session, which is what are the typical issues that face foreign companies. I'm not going to talk about operational issues. I'm not going to talk about ground level issues. My colleague Francesca will talk about those. A mindset in a foreign company in India is exotic, complex, multiple languages. You don't know, geography is far and wide. So it's a very complex issue for them, and their first mindset is shall I take a joint venture partner? It's very difficult for me as a foreigner, things like that. Ladies and gentlemen, I personally do not recommend. There's enough talent available in India to hire CEOs. I personally experienced with my colleagues who are sitting here, who entered into joint ventures statements, and the reality was even before we began the joint ventures, the aborts happened. Not abort was all the cards that we forced it. Joint ventures are sacred, more sacred than marriages. You hear your wealth is involved. Your wealth is involved, you can pack your marriage itself. So joint ventures, unless and this is the one big common issue. You guys are coming from a foreign land, you have a European market, you are accessing the Western world, you're coming to India to access the Indian market and maybe the South Asian market. But an Indian partner of yours has this vision, it's not global. Except if you join hands with Tatas or the Birlas, the conglomerates, the 50 billion, 100 billion, $10 billion plus enterprises. They are international partners in every which way. So if your scale is that, surely be a partner with them. Surely take a partner with them. If your scale is to handle, then you have a mindset. There are certain territories you cannot grow into, there are territories the Tatas will grow into. A Starbucks could not have come into India and been so successful within 1 year of success. They had not joined hand in Tatas. So things like that. But otherwise, let's avoid joint ventures. Nonetheless, Francesca and I have seen, we stitched several joint ventures. They're all doing very well. We have aborted, we've discouraged a lot of joint ventures, and those companies are doing equally well. I come come to two important regulatory issues. I'm going to take a little bit of time. There's a transfer pricing issue. It's a big issue. Indian tax guys are expanding the tax net by looking into every single element. There's a lot of compliance is happening. Nobody is making money on the side or skimming money from the tax. So they're expanding the tax net by saying, you have imported this machinery from your parent company. You have sold this goods to your parent company. Is it a arm's length transfer pricing? You have provided technology support to your company when you set up. You have charged them technology support costs, business development support costs, etc. Where is the justification that you've actually incurred these expenses? It's a big issue. What is the normal, what would you as a foreigner do? Go to your global players, like Big 4 or Big 10. Do they give you the right advice? Answer is no. We are suffering here. My colleague is here who is suffering that way. 3 years ago I told them this was not the way to do it. And today we have a backlash. So transfer pricing is an issue, must be addressed proactively, not retrospectively. Must be documented very well. For every invoice, for everything we have to have a backup details. I give you a simple illustration. If a client here has found for technology, we should charge the technology support cost. But the tax guy said, did you hire anybody outside from what you were existing? Or did you use existing resources to deliver on this technology? If so, fair enough, you can charge them one time, I'm giving you technology, but is the IPR in India or the IPR in Italy? If the IPR is not in India, then technology actually hasn't been transferred. You've incurred some operational costs. Justify to me the operational cost of X 100,000 euros. What is the cost of the person who is working on this? How many people, how many man hours? Is there a proper time sheet? Is it logged in properly? Has it been validated? Etc. etc. So, yet, if you do your documentation right, you will not find the taxman's wrath. I've done it in two cases. One, big firms, audit firms overruled. In another case, big firms are not involved. We did it, it had to be done. No issues asked, no questions asked. Same amount of money transferred out. Same taxman, same zone. Answer is handle it carefully. Once again, we do have extensive experience in handling this sensitive matter. The other element is on permanent establishment. This is, once again, the permanent establishment happens when the parent company is servicing an Indian client while there's an Indian subsidiary or a branch office providing the same services on behalf of its parent company. So there's some services being provided. Let's say you have exported some machinery from here. So you have bring some installation from here, some after-sales services from the Indian subsidiary or Indian branch office. You have an issue. Second, you send your people for installation, and that guy there, for all your projects, in a year, across all customers, across all projects, cannot be more than 180 days stay. The day you violate that, finito. My second word. You finished. Do you really finish? Because then they capture the entire mode, your income of what you have earned from India, profitability, not the income, is not subject to taxation in India. You get an offset. You get an offset. What is taxed in India will not be, there is no double taxation. So once again, this has to be very carefully imagined and conceptualized right at the time of doing the business. Enter into proper agreements with your Indian subsidiaries, treat them at arm's length, ensure the certain things we don't violate. I will just quickly on the Italian business and Indian opportunity, I've broken up into 4 components. Italian business is an entrepreneur, small sizes, revenue 10 to 50 million. Italian business is medium, business revenue 50 to 150 million. Italian businesses, large, 150 to 500 million, and global, quicker than that. In each of the categories, if you're very small, if you're up to 10, 50 million, you do need an Indian partner, notwithstanding my reservations. Because you don't have the bandwidth to handle the Indian category. But in 5 years, you can be the highest revenue generator. Payback is sensibly handled in 2 to 3 years. So you're not exposed to huge risk. You go small, you're covering it. Medium size. Ladies and gentlemen, I recommend don't go with a partner. 100%. In 5 years, Indian business can still be 25 to 33% of the global business, of your global business. You can use India based as a global supplier. Important thing, the payback here will be in 3 to 4 years. If you're large, 150 to 500 million, once again I recommend 100% owned. India should also be your global hub for global operations. Payback is 5 to 7 years. In 5 to 7 years, aim for an IPO in India. Valuations of IPO are the highest in the world. Average market PE is today about 28 times. No, a little bit more than that. In machinery tools, high-tech machinery tools, the PE is floats between 48 times to 180 times. The valuations are incredible. Don't hesitate. You're not giving your parent company away. You're floating an Indian company. The valuation, what you get in the Indian market, gets reflected in the valuation there. Please look into that corridor. Last, if you're a global company, you must partner with India. I give example at Starbucks. India can be, and once again, if you are partnering, ensure your term sheet, your joint venture agreement, gives you the option to do an IPO in India. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I will read this to those Italian businesses who are not yet present in India. Hopefully my presentation as I addressed is not a question whether you should be in India, a question of when and how soon. The last line about us, my colleagues here, we are the only ones, the unique ones. No one else in the country is providing the range of services like we provide to our customers who come setting up a business in India. From conceptualization, to market study, to designing the business strategy, to implementation, and finally creating value for investment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are only one. I take pride in saying that. Thank you, Jai Bharat. Grazie.